Hello and welcome to It's All Kicking Off, another football roundtable discussion podcast with myself, Adam Wilbourn from What Culture Football, Adam Nicholas and Simon Gallagher from What Culture Football, here to discuss another burning football issue. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to What Culture Football on either iTunes, Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily football podcasts. But gents, we are gathered here today to discuss...
We're going to win the league.
How does it feel to be sitting with two supporters of the team who are going to win the Premier League and the Champions League in one season?
Yes, I should clarify. We're talking about Newcastle United.
Who else?
Here.
Of course.
And the big sort of overarching question I want to ask you is: could Newcastle United be the surprise package this season? Now we could be accused of sort of
bias.
Well, a bias, and also going wherever the wind blows us. Because I'm fairly certain we did our Newcastle doomed podcast about
feel like
2 weeks
if
ago.
you were to get a cut of the two next to each other, look at what we're all wearing today, and like compare them. Like we're going to win the league, and then look at the last one. We're all undoubtedly in black. Like it's this.
Yes. So a fantastic victory over Tottenham on Sunday. First of all, before we get into the ins and outs of the future for Newcastle, what was that like for you?
It was nervy.
Yes.
I'm not going to lie. But the good thing about it was that it wasn't exactly an accidental victory where it has been in the past sometimes. I mean, you look at the stats and it makes damning reading because it was 80% to 20%.
But damning reading for Tottenham, I would say as well.
Oh, totally, because they made nothing.
Yeah.
And we limited them remarkably well. It was great. I mean, it was the time of my life for a long time.
A lot of speculation heading into this game, and certainly over the last couple of weekends, about Joe Linton.
Yes.
And whether or not he was worth the money that you paid for him, and whether or not investment had been made well enough at Newcastle. Looked like a changed man, didn't he?
He looks like the kind of guy you want to lead your line in terms of he's strong, he's aggressive, he bullies defenders, he's very good at holding the ball up, which is something we need because we're not exactly fantastically fast at getting forward. So him getting that ball and holding it and waiting for the rest of the team to come has been... He's doing the Rondon role from last year, isn't he? But he looks like he's also got the technical ability to go with that. Not that Rondon didn't have technical ability, obviously, but I think Sai's right, though. The match against Tottenham was... I think it wasn't like we just fluked it and got away with it. Tottenham didn't make anything up front. Arguably, all their players who would have produced something produced nothing, and we were fantastic in defence.
I was going to say, you don't just say that they didn't produce anything because they had fantastic players on there. Obviously, Eriksen came off the bench and speculation about his future. But you limited them, didn't you?
Completely. Yeah. The shape of the team. For the past 2 games, we've had none whatsoever to the point where the players on the pitch didn't know where they were playing, allegedly. Let's say.
Allegedly.
But then you watch them against Spurs and there was 2 banks of 4 and 5 and it was like they couldn't get round, they couldn't get through, and that was why they didn't create anything. It was a master plan.
So we've got to give credit here surely to Steve Bruce.
No, we do not.
It's hard.
Steve, if you're watching, mate, not for me. Not for me, because that performance, me and Sai were talking about this just before, was a performance that was nothing like the first 2 matches we've seen. The first 2 matches, he can have all the credit he wants for them, because I feel like that is Steve Bruce saying, let's do it this way. That's him trying something, him trying to put his stamp on it. And arguably, I feel like there's a bunch of players there who have been trained to play a certain way under Rafa Benitez, and I'm not suggesting that he just said, just do things the Rafa way, but let's be honest, that performance was miles better. Whether that's a response to criticism throughout from the Norwich performance, or whether it's a response to them going, we know what we're doing, let's go back to that. I'm not giving him any credit, not yet.
Bruce came out afterwards and said that should shut some people up. Do you think that's going to be the case, or do you think supporters will stay on his back for a prolonged period this season?
They'll stay on his back. I mean, we're still 19th.
Yes.
So
by a point.
Yes, I know,
Yeah,
but
I know what you mean. Yeah.
There's the people who have the issues with Rafa not being there are going to look at that victory and say, well, that was a victory made by Rafa Benitez. Yeah. As we just did. Just a second ago there.
Yeah.
So it's not like the problems are going to disappear for the fan base. He has to win more games than that. He has to win. So he's by direct comparison, Rafa won 1 last season, the first 10. Steve Bruce has to win at least 4 for anybody to even acknowledge the fact that he's had a better start.
Yeah.
It's Newcastle. We're not going to not complain because that's what our fan base is really good at.
So coming back to the original question then, like you said, you've struggled in the opening couple of weekends and put in some, less than great performances. Then you go to Tottenham, get this result. Could this be the catalyst for something new? Could Newcastle, we've overlooked? I often describe Newcastle as a sleeping giant. I mean, they're not as bad as your Leedsers or your other teams who've dropped down significantly. But on paper, they should be doing a lot better than they should. And when we talked about surprise packages this season from outside, say the top 5, we were talking about your Leicesters and your Evertons and your Wolves. We didn't ever mention Newcastle. Could they be a bit of more of a surprise package than people expect?
I don't want to be the downer on here, but I'm going to probably assume that role anyway. But when we did the last podcast, I guess which was before we'd signed anybody, and we were very doom and gloom about everything. And I don't know if Newcastle are the surprise package this season, purely because I feel like it's one win against Tottenham. At Tottenham, albeit a good result from a good performance, but ultimately this is... As a Newcastle fan, I'll be like, yeah, we're going to win the league. I've just joked on about, I've just done it all. But actually, practically, I don't know if they're the team who are going to break the tier. I would be amazed if we end up in the top 10 this year, just purely because the league itself is so competitive. Like, if I had to put it on paper and guess where we were going to be and the teams who could well be ahead of us, I imagine we might just creep in at the top 10, if that.
What's a bare minimum position to finish, and what is... best case scenario for you?
We were all fairly happy with the position last year, and that was bottom half of the table. Was it 13th, 14th?
13th, yeah.
It's got to the point where we're expecting the worst, and something like that after a season of ups and downs, shout out to Simon Miller, will be acceptable. I mean, I'd much rather see... I always feel better when we finish in the top half, because I feel like that's a sign, especially in this day and age, of a team who's doing reasonably
We never do
right.
it comfortably,
No,
do it.
like the year we did
seem to
finish,
sneak in.
we just crept in, and it's like we've become so used to bad performances, we've become so used to difficult times and ups and downs that you kind of just, Christ, there it is again, that you just, I don't know, you kind of settle for this mediocrity when there's other teams out there who probably want to get in the top 10 as well. We don't just have a God-given right to get in the top 10 because we've got a 52,000-seater stadium. That's not how it works. Like, yes, it should work. Yeah, I'd love it. I'd love it if that was the case. But 52,000 people going to a match doesn't mean we get to go into the automatic spaces in the top half of the table, which is probably an unpopular opinion, I realise, but it's kind of the realism of it.
Now, I said at the start of this season, I didn't think Newcastle United were going to get relegated purely because there were worse teams than them. I never thought that he'd put in performances like this, certainly an early stage of the season.
You're not alone there, man.
Is 17th, the bare minimum, or should they be aiming for far higher? And I'll get onto the Mike Ashley situation in a second. Where would you like to see them finish this season?
Well, first, but
which is still obviously very feasible.
Look, we've got lots of things have got to gel for us to get anywhere above, let's say, 15th. 15th and below is like by the skin of the teeth staying in the league.
Yeah,
we beat Tottenham because of several things, but one of the big things was that Joelinton, he struggled against Norwich because he was playing against Grant Hanley, which sounds like a very strange claim to make, but Grant Hanley is a limited footballer, as we found out when we played when we signed him. He's there to be
a nuisance.
Exactly, and to stop the ball, whereas Tottenham have football-playing defenders, so they're not going to give him a daft elbow at the back of the head or anything like that. And he did look stronger against Tottenham, but he wasn't getting the same hurrying, and he was all over the pitch away from the centre-halves. He was quite frequently on the wings picking the ball up, and there wasn't anybody going beyond him. What we need to do to turn that one performance into something longer term is get Alain Saint-Maximin on the pitch for longer than 10 minutes and have him bomb past him. Whether that
He
happens...
looks fantastic whenever I've seen him.
He does, but who in their right mind brings a player back after 1 day's training after an injury and puts them back in? There's no...
I can answer that.
Well, yeah. I said in their right mind.
Has he got one?
Yeah, I don't know. Like Almiron and him are the keys to having those sort of performances all season. But Joelinton's still going to get faced against the Grant Hanleys of this world. And those are the games where we'll struggle. So we'll probably look better against better teams. We looked better against Arsenal than we did against Norwich. And that Arsenal performance was rudderless and people didn't know where they were playing. It still looked better than when we were playing against Norwich. So it was an accusation that was levelled at Rafa's teams as well, in that we always played better against teams who were far better than us. That's why we beat Man City. But if we had to go and beat, like, I don't want to alienate an entire fan base, let's choose
we're a bad
lesser
mindset team, aren't we?
Yeah.
We go into the games against, like, say, a Norwich, who are newly promoted.
Away,
and we are away, and you're like, well, we should get something out of this, is what we go there with. And we shouldn't go with that mentality. The players should be, like, professional enough to be coached into thinking, you're playing Man City every week, turn it with that attitude. But it happens, and against like a team like Norwich, who in fairness plays some really nice football, like that, we probably haven't gone in the mindset of we're really good at this, setting up in a bank and then using like the opportunities we get to break away. And I think Sai's spot on. I think the teams we've had in the past that have done well, like you think about the team where it was Demba Ba, Cisse and Ben Arfa, that front three can break with pace. You've got two on the wing and you've got one in the middle to finish everything off. That seems to work. And Rafa's got that system in place where I think they look very comfortable now with the three centre-halves and the two wing-backs. And Richie and I can't think who was playing
It was Kraft.
It was Kraft, that was it. I was thinking it wasn't Yedlin, wasn't obviously because he's out at the minute. But that works, them guys going up and they're obviously in that they know how to play that system and it seems to be working. We're not as good at going to teams and thinking, we're the boss, we're in control of this game, we're going to come at you and you're going to have to play that way, because that's not who we are. And that's hard to translate that against the smaller teams.
You've talked about some of the strengths there that Newcastle have. What are the real areas of concern you have looking at the team, despite that performance against Tottenham?
I was quite concerned about Emil Kraft, actually. I didn't think he had a particularly good game. I mean, he's new to the league, so you can give him a little bit of leeway.
He looked like someone adjusted to the pace of the game, didn't he?
Yes, and not up to the pace in some cases. If he's faced with a winger who's like lightning fast, he's going to get beaten every time. Even just fast players are going to get past him. His positional sense was okay. He doesn't look like somebody who's played wing back a lot of times, so maybe that's room for improvement. That's not a bad thing. If he'd played there 100 games and he was playing like he has, then I would be concerned. I love Matt Ritchie for his industry and his attitude, and he kicks his own players up the arse for no reason. But I just think he's probably not a wing back either, and we need depth on both of those sides. We struggle if Longstaff isn't on the ball, which he wasn't at the start of the Spurs game. He gave the ball away a couple of times, but then as soon as he picks up his stride, he's amazing. Like, he goes from being another Newcastle academy player, which is a bad thing for anybody who doesn't follow Newcastle, to being somebody who, like, you can see why Man U would want to sign him. And we just need a bit more creativity. But we've got these things, like, those are positives, that Longstaff's not playing his full game yet. Alan Saint-Maximin is not on the pitch yet. Almiron probably needs to gel with the others before he gets up to his full stride. We've got no depth. If we get injured,
I was going to say depth seems to be a real concern.
That's a real concern, because already we've even seen the odd knock here and there, and you're thinking, like, we've had a few rotations already where players haven't been fully fit or whatever, and it's kind of a worry when it's the start of the season. You think, like, you had one job really in pre-season to get fit. I realise getting injured is inevitable sometimes, but Sai's right in terms of, like, if we get a couple of them key players injured, we are in trouble. Like, we're in trouble because the guys to bring in and fill those gaps are not good enough. They're either not good enough, or they're untested.
Sometimes they don't exist.
Yeah,
they're just
not there.
There
isn't a player to fill in the gap. So it's difficult, it's worrying, but at the same time, we're not the only club in the league who's got that issue. Like, there are teams, as you said already, there's teams in that league who may end up having have a worse team and may end up finishing worse than us. These are issues that every team's going to have to deal with. So hopefully, touch whatever wood there is in here, that will be all right for a certain point. But in terms of what we have got, which is usually not our best focal point, because I'm not completely terrified of what we can do. If we can get these players fit and get them on the pitch, there's a strong starting 11 there, and I would be happy to see them do well.
Midweek game against Leicester this week. How are you feeling about that? Obviously not in the league, but how are you feeling about that?
Because we're being told that we're going to make it a priority, but everybody around this table knows for a fact we're going to go to that game on Wednesday, and the lineup will not be the same lineup as the Tottenham game.
We've been here before.
Yeah.
We've done this
last
before.
year, in fact.
Yeah, we
And
always
probably
get the
the year
same. They say it's going to be a priority this year, and then you're out in round 1 or whatever it is, and it's like, oh, good. Well,
We tried.
we tried. Did we? We turned up for the match, which is good.
In theory, yeah. No offense, Newcastle should lose that game against Leicester.
Oh, well, yeah, we
absolutely.
should, yeah.
Well,
But there's a difference between losing that game and not even attempting to win that game.
Yeah. It's whether Leicester would put out the first team against us, because they might look at it and say, we probably don't need to put our first team out to maybe win that game.
The issue always seems to be that we say we're going to try for these competitions, and it seems to always be in seasons when we really just should be like, yeah, let's go out of them all and just focus on staying alive.
Yeah.
That's the issue I've got. Like the teams we've had in the past who've done well in the league, you're like, they never prioritise these cups, they never even mention it. And then the times when it looks like Rafa Benitez is classically known for winning cups, and it was like, we'll make it a priority. And then in the end, he doesn't really get a chance to put out the teams that he wants to put out, and we're out the cups before we've even really started. Or we get put against one of the best teams in the league in the first round, like the first minute. And it's like, it happens every year. I mean, Leicester aren't exactly the best team in the league, but they're not the worst by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I think they're certainly were one of my picks to break into the top 6 potentially.
It'll be. I won't be dead upset if we go out of that cup.
No.
But equally, I'll be upset because we don't get any of the magic of the
eternal
cup. The only thing the
eternal toss-up being Newcastle fan. I think that's what the black and white stripes are for, because it's like
it is, yeah.
It's the happiness
Extremes.
and the sadness. It's two extremes melt together, and you can't ever do one without the other.
Would you? Yeah, here's a question. Would you take no cup run, but as comfortable 13th, let's say, or magic of the cup, but you flirt with relegation and maybe aren't safe going into the final weekend?
If we then were safe, then Magic Cup run.
Yeah.
But the reality is we wouldn't be.
No.
So
Well, I think lots of people would, if you had to ask Newcastle fans, and I'm guessing here purely, but I would say the fact that we haven't had a cup in so many years, you would be well up for getting a trophy in the cabinet. However, just look at Portsmouth. I always think of this. They had that amazing time. Harry Kane. Harry Redknapp won them the FA Cup. They had a brilliant run in the league and all that sort of thing. And then it all went tits up, and it was that way, and it was that way quick, and it was free fall. I'm not that desperate for a cup.
Yes.
I mean, it's a nice moment, and I bet if you asked all the Portsmouth fans, they'd still take it. They'd love to have that because it's a memory you're never going to be able to replace. But at the same time, they're now nowhere near the top flight football. And I guess sometimes that's not a bad thing if you ask half the people in our office like lower league football because
they have to.
Well, because you have to, but also because you get to win a few matches, I think. Hey?
I prefer actual league football to non-league, to be honest. I'll take back being back in League 2, thanks very much, than losing to Stockport County yesterday.
Okay.
All
right.
Very finally, we can't have a chat about Newcastle without mentioning Mike Ashley.
If only.
Any change do you see in the foreseeable future?
I just don't.
Is it weird because you look at results like we saw against Spurs and almost think that's great as a Newcastle fan and want to do well in the league, but at the same time you kind of want this collapse so that you need because he'll look at that result and say, see, well, this is spend any money, you don't need any investment.
So that's the problem in a nutshell. Like if we do well, which is what we want. If we do well based on the limited resources he's given you, he does well and then says, well, you did well last year with that, so we'll actually give you less this year. And basically a win over Tottenham Hotspur at Tottenham is like Mike Ashley wandering out with the thing from Men in Black and just going to the fans and like wiping all the memories, and they're all like, we just beat Tottenham, we're going to win the league. Everything's gone, everything's fine. And then a couple of weeks later, everyone's talking about Steve Bruce, he's a genius. 3 weeks later, we've lost 300
I don't think
pounds.
anybody said that.
I guarantee you at least one person decided Steve Bruce was a genius. 3 games later, 3 defeats, and then you're back where you were, and suddenly everybody's complaining. The problem is, I feel like unless they're actually going to do something, which I find that's the most frustrating part for me, we can say we're not going to turn up matches, this, that, and t'other, but ultimately, what have we done properly to stop that from happening? People are still turning up. People are still taking their families. People are still buying the pie and the pints and the peas and everything else that goes with it at half time and putting money in his pocket. So it's a really difficult one because we can sit and moan all we want, but he's not going anywhere at all unless 52,000 people decide to not go to that stadium and make that big of an impact. he's not going to pay
Even
attention.
then, I don't.
And
think,
even then, he'd be like,
even
"Well,
then, I don't
it
think
was
he
an off
would.
week."
As soon as he can get on the telly, it doesn't matter. The biggest indication for him is he lost his two biggest business partners, not business partners, it was employees.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be classed as
Business partners.
And his response to it was a public announcement that said, it was like, thanks very much. They were very important. We will continue to push our agenda of raising the brand of Sports Direct.
Yeah.
And the way he phrased it made it very clear that he doesn't care what you say about Sports Direct. It's that you say literally the words Sports Direct.
It's like the engagement on, so not necessarily for Sports Direct, but I mean, it's like what they say about social media engagement. If you're a hashtag that's trending, it doesn't matter what the hashtag is for, unless of course you're Kevin Spacey, but like, or somebody of that ilk.
Yeah.
If it's, as long as it's
Actors, you mean?
Anybody apparently from the 90s or so. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, in terms of, they don't care as long as the talk is happening. I think
Any publicity is good publicity.
I'm not advocating for 1 minute before somebody tries to stab us in the street that people should
talking to you.
not
Put
go
the
to
knife
the
down.
game or should do anything or should just give up. But the reality is that all of the publicity around Sports Direct for years has been absolutely terrible. Like, people dying at his factories,
Yeah, yeah.
ambulances being called, 0-hour contracts, him being hauled in front of the government to say, you are a terrible person. And all he's done is gone, okay, I'll stop doing that. And he hasn't. And yet he's still the biggest sports retailer in the country. And that's all that matters.
big mugs.
It's
I
just
think
an awful...
big
yeah,
mugs.
exactly.
big mugs. So
buy
52,000 big
presents.
mugs.
So I was about to say that's a metaphorical thing to go with those big mugs. What I would say is though, if I'm Mike Ashley, the businessman, you don't care. You don't care because your bottom line is exactly where it should be, and everything's going the way you want it to. And what, you're going to get upset about 52,000 people you're never going to meet? Like, he's not bothered. Like, and that's the harsh reality of it. So we could spend hours here talking about it, but it's a waste of time ultimately. I'd rather focus on the fact
That
that
we beat Spurs and we're going to win the league.
We're going to win the league.
Give us a number where they're going to finish in the league.
Who? Spurs?
Newcastle.
I'll give you where I'd like them to finish, and then so first, obviously, no. I actually genuinely think if the team could get itself together and keep everyone fit, I do believe there's a top 10 finish in there for them. I actually think we're probably going to end up finishing around about where we did last season. I'll optimistically say 12th.
See, if we go back to the fundamental question, could we be a surprise package? In terms of where everybody in the country probably thinks we're going to finish, which is rock bottom,
Yeah.
then we are. Because I think 11th or 12th is probably about right.
There's always, the last couple of seasons, there's always been about 5 teams from 9th probably down to about 13th. Maybe, well, no, math doesn't work there, but you know what I mean? Like, who can float up and down on the last day of the season. Sometimes you've seen the person at the bottom there jump all the way to the top and, like, carve out a 9th position. So they might get 9th, but actually they only got it by, like, a point or two.
Because some of the players are on holidays, etc.
Well, exactly. So it's not crazy, but I do think you got to weather your expectations, unfortunately, because this was a lovely moment, and Joe Linton is obviously a god amongst men, but the reality is it's a long bloody season.
Andy Carroll's coming back, though, so we'll be fine.
As
King
always,
Carroll returns.
never a dull moment being a Newcastle United fan. Let us know your thoughts on this in the comment section below or on Twitter at WhatCultureFC. Watch there. You can follow all three of us. You can follow Adam Nicholas at
It's Adam Nicholas.
You can follow Simon Gallagher at
Cy Gallagher.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn. You can follow us all at WhatCultureFC, as I said. And make sure you subscribe to What Culture Football for daily football podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. My thanks to Adam and to Cy. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.